Hello, pool fans. In this video, I'm going to explain a little bit about seven pairs, talk a little bit about strategy, about scoring, and the terminology I use. So in this example, we'll see that player one did a break, and he actually sank the solid red. So when you sink a ball on the break, you do get a point for that pair. Now that leaves this red stripe as an orphan, which can be used later on. But at this point, the score is 1-0. Now, if you recall from the rules, players work through the colors in pairs, so in a numerical order, meaning the numbers of the solids. So we start with the yellow, move to the red, blue, then the purple, then the orange, then the green, then the brown. Um, 1 through 7. So at this moment, we're working on the yellow pair. And in fact, both players are working on the same pair, um, alternating between turns. So let me describe what a legal shot would be. In this scenario, um, the legal balls to strike are, of course, the balls of the pair, the yellow pair, and you're always able to strike the 8 ball. The 8 ball is kind of like, I call it the safety outlet. It's like a safety valve. If you have no shot on the pair, you can always strike the 8 ball. And another caveat is that you are allowed to strike the orphan pairs. So this orphaned red stripe is possible to pocket. And of course, you continue your turn if you pocket. So while I'm working on the yellow, my options right now, I can easily pocket this ball and I could easily pocket the red, but what would be difficult is this striped yellow up here. Somehow I would have to get position on that. So at this moment, I don't see a great option to get position on that yellow. All right, so what are my options for a shot? What I can do is I could either, generally speaking, I could either attack this pair, meaning attack the pair to try to pocket both balls of the pair, or I can set up. So a setup shot is really simply when you're not trying to pocket a ball, you're just trying to position the balls for the future. And of course, the next player to shoot will be your opponent. And now this brings up a very interesting part of the game, is that while it is called a setup shot, you're actually setting up your opponent. So, and this is where I think the beauty of the game is, or the unique aspect of the game is that what you want to do is not make it too difficult. In other words, you don't want to set up the balls in an impossible situation because then your opponent will not be tempted to attack that pair. You want to set up the pair in a way that sort of tempts your opponent to try to attack it, but to try to make a very difficult attack. So if you have no option or don't want to attack the pair, you want to set up the pair, perhaps to improve it a little bit to make it more tempting for your opponent to attack. And that really is the essence of the game, is that for every pair, somebody is going to score a point. So for example, if I pocket this ball and the yellow ball on my same turn, I'm going to win that point. But if I pocket the first ball and I fail to pocket the second ball, my opponent wins that point. That's just the basic concept of the scoring. So you're always balancing the risk versus the reward, because the risk might be too great and that point will be what I call conceded. Like when you fail on the second ball of a pair, that point gets conceded to the opponent. Even though you were attacking, you failed the attack and therefore the opponent gets that point. So that is the essence of the game, is to really attack and make a point on the pair when you're somewhat confident that you can make the pair. So, for example, if this yellow ball were here, I would feel pretty confident that I could pocket this and also pocket that one. Maybe that's a 90% confidence, right? But if, for example, this ball were, say, here, um, maybe I could make this and get a position here and have a shot up to this corner. But that's less confident. That's going to require more skill. Maybe that's 50% uh, confidence. But I might be tempted to still to make that shot. All right, so um, that's how the scoring works. So let me discuss a little bit about this, when how to balance when to attack. Now, if I have 1-0, you know, it's very early in the game. But if say the score was something like 1-3, 1-3, 1-3. Now, if I'm player one, um, I have to be very careful because if I fail my attack, the my opponent is going to get that fourth point and win the game. So if I were player one, I would want to have a certain amount of confidence that I'm definitely going to make that point. So I might not attack here where I would attack if the score were 0-0. Now, likewise, if I have 3 points and I'm here, I'm I'm willing to make a more risky attack because if I fail the attack, my player's only going to get have 2 points, and I'll still be ahead with a chance to win on other pairs. All right, so um, I think that's essentially what I wanted to say about the strategy. This strategy I've described, it really is the essence of the game. It is trying to, um, there is a cat and mouse game that goes on at the beginning of the game when there are a lot of balls. In fact, the first pair is really quite difficult to attack with much confidence um, because there are a lot of balls on the table, and because um, the holes can be blocked quite easily, or your shots can be blocked. But remember, now I did want to discuss what are the legal options because the rules for banking comes into play. Now, when you make a shot, let's say you're doing a setup and you're not really trying to make it into any pocket, you must drive the ball to a rail. That's a pretty common rule, even in 8 ball, 9 ball, I think. So, but where the rule is a little different is that when so in this situation, let's say I'm player two, my legal balls are one, two, three, and four. Now I can strike this ball and I could attempt to pocket it, but I must drive it to a rail. But so let me do that. Let me just take a shot on this red ball, and well, I scratched. Now I didn't drive it to the rail, so that would be ball in hand for the opponent. So I'm going to give my opponent ball in hand right here. Now I'm gonna put this ball in a very difficult spot. Let's say something like I don't know, right here. Now I do have a shot on the yellow, but I don't want to take that shot because likely I will pocket it. Um, but when it comes to banking, now I'm going to take a shot on this, a setup on this ball just to show that when you make a bank shot like this, that yellow ball does not need to be driven to a rail. I think that's different from standard pool rules, but in this game, that's an acceptable shot. So as long as the bank shot strikes one of the legal balls, it's okay. Now, if for example this ball were on the rail like that, again, this removing a ball from the rail does not require that ball to strike another rail. In other words, let me do that again, but with less power. And so this is actually going to be a legal shot as well. If you just get the ball off the rail, that is legal. Of course, you can always strike the 8 ball, but the 8 ball must be driven to a rail, of course, kind of like that. That's a legal shot. And so, in general, a ball must be driven, at least one ball must be driven to the rail, unless you're making a bank shot on on a ball. Like let's say 3 balls are snookered and you just got this one right here. Of course, this is an easy shot, but if I were making a bank for this one, Let me see if I could make it. Yeah. See, that's a legal shot, and it did hit strike the rail, but it doesn't need to. All right, so I think I've discussed what I wanted to in this video. A little bit about the scoring, a little bit about attacking a pair versus setting up a pair. That is really the major distinction in the shots that are made. Either it'll be a setup or an attack. Now, if you attack the first ball, remember, if you miss the first ball, it's fine. The game just carries on as normal. But if you make the first ball, you must make the second ball to score a point. If you fail to make the second ball, that point goes to your opponent, and you want to consider the risk and the difficulty of the the shot on both balls, not just the first one. Now, on that subject, when you have two balls to shoot, in general, it's better to get the more difficult shot first, or to perform the more difficult shot first. So, for example, if I have this ball, let me see. I have this ball in an easy location, and this other one in a difficult shot. In this scenario, I'm going to want to make the difficult shot first, and then come back and get this easy ball. That's a general principle. That's always in effect. Again, there is no real penalty to missing the first ball of an attack. You just your turn's over and the player continues. All right, so that's a nice little discussion on strategy, I think, on the legal ball shots, and a little bit on the scoring. Of course, the first player to get 4 points wins, and so not all the balls are removed from the table. You could win 4-0, and there could be, you know, 6 or 7 balls still on the table. But yeah, the first to get 4 out of the 7 available points wins the game. All right, that's a little bit on the strategy of 7 ball, 7 pairs. Thanks for listening.